Hi, everyone. This is Jocelyn Levin at the Lyon Township Public Library. I am the children's librarian here at the library, and we're very excited to have guests joining us today. And we're thrilled to have some friends from the Howell Nature Center to tell us a little bit about some fantastical beasts and to share some of the fun friends that they have living there at the Nature Center. So thank you so much.
All right. Can everybody hear me just fine? All right. Awesome. So first off, I'd just like to give everyone a little bit of an intro about what Howell Nature Center is, in case anyone has never had a chance to come out here. We do a lot of different things here. A lot of the things we do revolve around nature, from things like school groups coming in and getting out and doing things like canoeing and fishing, even all the way to our wildlife park, where we do a lot of really awesome things with animals. So my favorite thing that we do here at the Howell Nature Center is that we have a wildlife rehabilitation clinic. Now, what this means is that we basically have a hospital for wild animals, because a lot of times wild animals, they get injured, they get sick, maybe they're abandoned and alone. And for all these reasons, they wouldn't be able to survive on their own. But what's really awesome is that if people find them in these situations, they can bring them to us. And then we are hopefully able to help fix that animal up, heal them up, and then send them back out into the wild. Now, what's really awesome about this is we help over 4,000 animals per year, which makes us the largest wildlife rehab clinic in the entire state of Michigan. So we're able to help out more animals than anybody else, which is really, really awesome. It's something I'm very proud that we're able to do here. But kind of on the flip side of that is that there are times that some of the animals we have in, they may be permanently injured, or they may be too used to people like some of our pets are. And because of that, they cannot always be released back out into the wild. So we actually do have a lot of permanent residents. At this time, we have around 35 different species of native Michigan animals living with us. And it's really cool. If anybody has a chance to ever come out here, you can walk around and see all of these animals inside of their habitats, which we try to build to make look as natural as possible. And you can see a lot of our native animals that you don't usually get to see. So I don't have these animals today for our program, but living with us permanently, we do have animals like bobcats, coyotes, bald eagles, great horned owls, red-tailed hawks. We have a lot of really, really awesome stuff if anybody does ever have a chance to come out here and walk around our park and look at our animals. But like I said, today, everything that I have for you all are some of our permanent residents. They're what we consider our ambassador animals, because a lot of them are very comfortable near people, and they do a really awesome job of helping people educate about their species. So today we're talking about fantastical beasts. So a lot of things that we think we know or may have heard about animals sometimes come from historical things. So throughout history, a lot of people have looked at animals through a different lens. If you think about it, 1,000 years ago, people didn't have all the modern science we have nowadays to know all we have about animals. So some of the things that they thought they knew may have been correct, and some of them may not have always have been. So when we do look at the animals, we'll talk a little bit about, how they kind of got that fantastical beast backstory. And then we'll talk a bit about each animal specifically and some really cool and fun facts about each of them, because all the animals I have are really, really awesome. All right. So without further ado, we can get started now with our first animal. What's up, Nebby? And then I do want to say that if anybody does have any questions at that time, we encourage you to ask them. But the way it'll work the best is that if we do it at the end of each animal, so it'll be fresh in everyone's mind, and then we won't have to really interrupt it or anything. So right here, the first animal I have for everybody is one of our rats. So this is a Norway rat, and her name is Nebula. She is a girl rat. And as you can see, she has a really, really cool coat of fur. And I think she is a very, very cute looking rat. So although I did talk about how all the animals we get are animals that were found in the wild and brought to us to be permanent residents. Our rats are actually a little bit different. So rats are domesticated animals. And what this means is that you can actually legally own them as pets, which is a lot different than a lot of the animals we have here, like our bobcat and our coyote and things like that, that are illegal to take home as pets. So the reason we have our rats is because there are actually a lot at the Humane Society, which is where a lot of people rescue their cats and dogs and all their other awesome pets they have at home. And we rescued a few because rats do live in Michigan. And also they're a really great educational animal because a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions or maybe think things about rats that aren't always true. So talking about fantastical beasts, and how rats have been kind of seen that way. Throughout history, rats have always lived near people. And this is because they can eat a lot of different things. So because of that, they have a lot of different lores and things that have been told about them throughout history. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these things are negative for at no fault of the rat itself. So first off, a lot of people associate rats with kind of being like a bad omen because they carry sickness and diseases and things like that. Now, this is something I like to talk about because it is not always necessarily true about our rats. So the biggest thing people associate rats with is kind of spreading and starting the Black Plague. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's something you'll probably eventually learn in school. But it was basically this really big sickness that happened about 800, 900 years ago in Europe. And a lot of people, unfortunately, died from it. And now what happened is that rats kind of got the blame for this because people thought that they carried the disease and then spread it to people and ended up causing the death of millions. Now, this actually is not true. So those rats did never actually carry the disease. It was actually carried by fleas that live on the rats. And since rats do live so close to people a lot of times, they kind of act as a spreader, bringing those fleas closer to the people. So rats actually never did carry that disease. And although all wild animals can carry a disease, rats actually do not really have much of a higher chance, statistically speaking, compared to other animals. So throughout history, they really have gotten a bad rap for that. Another thing about rats is that they have always kind of been seen as more aggressive and larger than they have throughout history. So a lot of tales, a lot of things that people know about rats, they probably think of these really big, mean rats that may be about the size of house cats. And this is another thing that in general just isn't really true. So Nebula right here, she is underneath her newspaper because she's doing something that all rats do called burrowing. But as you can kind of see her body, you'll notice that she is fairly large, but she's not too big. She's only about 8 inches long, which is as big as a rat will get, which is nowhere near the size of a house cat. A lot of rats do not grow that big, and they're actually a lot more sweet and intelligent than a lot of people assume they are. So a lot of people think that rats are kind of mean and might like bite you or attack you. A lot of rats make good pets because they are very sweet. They can be very cuddly, and they can also be very smart. So rats can remember their owner's face after not seeing them for more than a year. Now, this is really, really incredible for an animal as small as a rat. So because of all these ways, unfortunately, rats have gotten kind of a bad look throughout stories and the way people have talked about them historically. But I am glad that we do have some so we can kind of talk about those things and clear some of them up. Now, specifically moving on to some facts about Nebula herself. Like I said, we got her from the Humane Society. She is an animal that can be someone's pet. We actually do not know her age exactly. It is quite difficult to age rats. Now, rats typically only live about 2 to 3 years. So we assume that Nebula here is probably somewhere between 1 and 2 years old, since she is clearly an adult, and she is still in a very healthy stage of her life. Now, rats can do a lot of really awesome things. So as you notice right now, what she's doing is she is trying to go underneath that newspaper because that is very comfortable for a rat. These rats, Norway rats, they actually really like digging underground and forming burrows where they live in. So if anybody here has ever seen the movie Ratatouille, And you remember the scene where there were a lot of rats down in the sewers with Remy, with that other really big rat? That is actually pretty realistic. That is how rats would live in the wild. They like living underground and they like living near a lot of other people. Now, rats are also something called nocturnal. Now, for anybody who isn't familiar with that word, what it means to be nocturnal is that you are mostly active during the night. So we are the opposite of being nocturnal. Most people are active during the day and we like to sleep at night, but rats actually do the exact opposite. And the reason for this is because it actually helps them avoid predators. So predators are things that try to eat other animals like rats. And as some people might know, there are a lot of animals in the wild that would want to eat rats. So kind of the most common one would be our cats. House cats and things like that. They love hunting things like mice and rats, but also things like hawks and owls and snakes and coyotes and raccoons. And so many different animals would like to eat a rat if they could in the wild. Now, although this may sound sad, it is actually kind of something that's a benefit of rats, is that they do form a food source to a lot of other bigger, very more charismatic animals like bobcats and owls and things like that. So since they're active at night, they're actually able to avoid most of the things that want to eat them besides owls, which as some people might know are also nocturnal. Now, something really sweet about Nebula here is that we named her that because of the Guardians of the Galaxy character, if anyone has ever seen that movie. And the reason we named our rats after a superhero is because they are real life superheroes. So something that might surprise a lot of people here is that rats have an amazing sense of smell, and they can smell just as good as a dog can. So the reason that this is important is because rats can actually be trained to sniff out bombs, like some people may have heard that certain dogs can do. Now, what's really awesome about this is that although a lot of people think that rats cause a lot of sickness and death, being able to sniff out these bombs, and since they're so light, they can actually get closer to them than dogs can. And because of this, they have actually probably saved a lot more lives than a lot of people think that they have. So we like to think of rats here at the Howell Nature Center as little superheroes themselves because they do a lot of really amazing things. Now, something about rats is that they are in the rodent family, which some people may know means they are related to other things like squirrels and rabbits and beavers and woodchucks and a lot of animals like that. Now, the one thing that makes a rodent is that they all have very big buck teeth. So we all have big buck teeth right here that are our largest teeth, and those are called our incisors. Now, what's really cool about rats and squirrels and all the other rodents in the world is that they have specialized front buck teeth. And the reason that they're very specialized is that they never stop growing. So the reason that a lot of us associate rodents with gnawing on things like wood and gnawing on their food is because they actually need to whittle those teeth down, because if they get too big, it actually becomes difficult for them to eat, or they could even hurt themselves by biting down on their own mouth. So just a little fun fact about rodents is that you know something is a rodent if it has those incisors that never stop growing. All right, I'll see if I can kind of get her maybe out a little bit so you can see some of her features. So something I want everyone to look at is her ears. So rats have very, very special ears. And the first thing that you may notice is that they actually don't have any fur on them. So if anybody here has a pet cat or a pet dog, if you think about your pet cat and dog, think about the tail and their ears and their paws. They all have fur on them, right? So it's very weird that rats are mammals, but they don't have fur covering their entire body like our pet cats and dogs at home. The reason this is very special is because rats are very well adapted, meaning they can live in a lot of different places. But because of this, they have to be prepared to live somewhere in Michigan where it can get very cold in winter, or there are also a lot of rats living places as south as Mexico or Brazil where it gets very, very hot. So not having that fur over their whole bodies actually helps them regulate their body heat, and they can lose some of that heat if they're getting too hot by not having that fur, and they're able to live in a lot of different places. Now, a fun fact about rats is that they are actually considered the second most populous mammal in the world behind humans. And it's actually debated by some people that there may be more rats than people in the world. Now, there's about 7-8 billion people, meaning that there could be that many rats in the world, which is very, very incredible. There's not a lot of other animals in the world that have that big of a population size. And the reason for this is because rats are very good at eating a lot of different things. So some people may have heard about rats who go through the trash and like to eat people's garbage. The reason that they do this is because they are what is called opportunistic eaters. And the reason that this is important is because animals that can eat more things and more different kinds of things are a lot better at surviving and adapting to their environment. So there was one study done to see how much food a rat eats in its lifetime. And one specific rat was found to have eaten over 4,000 different things in its life. Now, like I said, rats typically only live about 2 years. And I don't know about you guys, but I have not probably eaten 4,000 different foods in the past 2 years. As people, we eat a lot, but 4,000 is a huge number. So for an animal, that's really incredible, and it helps them be able to survive in a lot of different situations. If you think about something like a bald eagle that eats primarily fish, it's probably eating less than 5 different kinds of fish in its entire lifetime. And then you compare that to something like a rat, which can eat 4,000 different kinds of food. It is a very, very incredible thing that rats do. All right, does anybody at this time have any questions about Nebula or any of our rats in general?
So I heard it was interesting when you said that rodents are the animals whose teeth always keep growing. So
Yeah.
you don't always think of, like, say, rabbits as rodents, but they would fit in that term, wouldn't they?
Yep. Rabbits definitely fit into the rodent family. So they are a bit different than things like beavers and rats and things. But since they have those growing incisors that never stop growing, they are considered rodents. So it's basically all it takes to be put in the rodent family. And there are a lot more animals, mammals that show that off than people would usually think off the top of their heads.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions?
How many different colors can rats be?
So rats can come in a lot of different colors. Nebula here is kind of one of our more colorful and pretty ones, even though they are all very cute. The other ones we have 2 brown ones. And then we also have one who is tan. But they really can come in all colors. They could be white, they could be black. There are a lot of different kinds. And then another thing I will say about rats is that they actually do not originally come from America or Michigan in general. It's believed that they originally actually came from China, and then they moved to Europe, and then they hitched their way on boats and found their way to America. So since they are so spread out throughout the world, there are a lot of different color variations that rats can have that help them blend into their environments.
All about the camouflage.
Yeah, exactly. All right, sweet. So we can move on to our next animal here. Those were very good questions. All right. Hey, dude. How you doing? All right, come on, sir. I know. All right, everyone. So this right here is one of our eastern box turtles. And now this right here is Sprinkles, our eastern box turtle. So eastern box turtles are very, very cool because they are actually a lot different than a lot of turtles. So they are Michigan's only true terrestrial turtle. So what that means is that they spend all of their life on land. Now, if any of you have ever seen a turtle in the wild in your lifetime, you have most likely seen it near water, near a pond, near a stream, or a small lake. That is what makes these guys very, very unique, is they are the only ones who spend all their life walking around the forest on land. And they really, although they can swim, they really have no need for it and don't go in water unless they want to cool down or get a drink. So talking about fantastic beasts, turtles have had kind of a lot of stuff talked about them throughout history. And one of the biggest things is that there are a lot of cultures who believed that the world existed on a turtle's back thousands of years ago. So that is a bit different here than Sprinkles, because most people would assume that that turtle was kind of like swimming through space, like a lot of turtles do now. But because of that, turtles have actually gotten a fairly good look from people. A lot of people actually think about turtles in a pretty positive way, which is awesome compared to how people think about things like rats. Because we want people to think about all animals in a positive light, because all animals have something really awesome to offer nature in the ecosystem. So like I said, a lot of people were very appreciative of turtles and kind of thought that they were very ancient, important beings that kind of helped spur on the life that we know it in our galaxy. So they did get a lot of respect. But what is unfortunate is that recently people really haven't been respecting turtles' homes. So turtles are an animal that are highly endangered. A lot of different species are. The eastern box turtle here, although it is not considered endangered yet, it is losing population numbers. And a big reason for this is habitat loss. So a lot of turtles like to live near wetlands, which are fairly rare and also very important to the ecosystem because they have a lot of water in them that helps recycle and clean out the nutrients in the ecosystem. And in turn, that makes everything very, very healthy. Now, what's unfortunate is that a lot of people are destroying these wetlands to do things like make malls and subdivisions in schools and all those type of things. Which is unfortunate because a lot of times if you make a turtle leave its home, since they are so slow and pretty small, it's very hard for them to go find a new home. They're not like rats, how we just talked about, how they could go up to basically any dumpster they want and find some food. Turtles need very specific circumstances for their home. So it is unfortunate that we kind of recently haven't been respecting turtles as much, and we are losing some of them in our ecosystem. But there are a lot of things that we can do, like protecting our wetlands and spreading awareness. Another thing that we can do to help out our turtle friends is help them cross the road. So as some people may know, turtles are very vulnerable to being hit by cars, and that is because they are so slow and they're not good at leaving their home. So if someone builds a road in the middle of their home, they're going to have to constantly cross that road back and forth because all they know is that original home they were born in. They can't go find a new one like we could. So something I do like to tell people is that let's say if you saw Sprinkles here crossing the road and she was going in this direction, something you want to make sure that you're always doing to help out turtles is carrying them in the direction they were heading. Because what happens if Sprinkles was moving in this direction and you take her back to this side of the road is that she will instantly just turn around and try crossing the road again. So something that's very important is that it is okay to help turtles cross the road. You just have to remember to always take them in the direction that they are heading. And this is something very, very helpful for a lot of turtles who may get stuck in roads or hit by cars. It is something pretty similar we see at our nature center. A pretty common turtle injury is turtles that were in vehicular accidents and their shells get cracked. Which is actually the best case scenario because a lot of time turtle shells actually aren't strong enough to protect them from a car. Now, talking a bit about Sprinkles here specifically, she was actually brought to us because she was someone's illegal pet. So this is something else that has also happened a lot with turtles beyond losing their homes, is that a lot of people find them in the wild and they take them home to be their pet. Now, although Sprinkles here is very, very cute, this is illegal and it's not very nice to her because she wants to be out in nature living her life. But since someone did have her as her pet, she became very used to people, just like our pet cats and dogs would be. She expects to get fed by us, and she expects us to provide her home and all that. So she wouldn't be able to survive in the wild because she lost a lot of those natural instincts that turtles need to survive. And now this is really unfortunate because although we do give her a very good home and a very good life, we do like to see all of our animal friends return back to the wild, living their natural lives. So that is the reason she's here. And it is the reason a lot of turtles are being taken from the wild. So it's another thing that I do like to tell people about, that if you ever do see a turtle out in the wild and it doesn't need your help crossing the road or finding its way back home, the best thing to do is to just leave it alone. So mostly turtles don't really like being touched by random people, especially in the wild. Sprinkles here is very used to it because she's so used to people. But if they were in the wild, they wouldn't really like being touched by people. So the best thing to do is you can watch them, you can enjoy them, but they would like to be left alone the most so they can just live their natural turtle lives. Now, some really specific cool things about eastern box turtles is that they can actually fit their entire body in their shell and then shut that shell to protect themselves from predators. Now, you may be surprised and think in your head, can't all turtles do that? Why is that special about just Sprinkles, the eastern box turtle? Actually, not all turtles can do that. Most turtles actually do not put their bodies inside of their shell to protect them from predators. Another turtle you guys may be a bit more familiar with would be a painted turtle, which is a very common turtle you see in ponds and lakes, or a snapping turtle. That's another turtle some people may have heard of, have seen about. So snapping turtles, they actually would not really need to go into their shell because they would actually rather just bite at their prey. And then also most turtles also, if you look here, even if a turtle, a normal turtle, like put their arm inside of their shell, if this part was still open, it would still be exposed. So something with a very sharp beak, like a hawk or a stork, or even something like a raccoon, which has fingers that can work kind of like ours, they would actually be able to get inside of that shell and it wouldn't really protect the turtle too much. So most turtles really just use their shell as a portable home. They might use it as defense, as a last defense. But eastern box turtles do it all the time if they ever feel threatened. And this is because they actually have a very high top of their shell. And then they also have these ridges on the bottom that can actually kind of close up. So they can move their entire body inside that shell and then they can shut that shell like that. So not even something like a hawk or a raccoon could pry that shell open. So it's a very good defense mechanism, and it's also something we don't really see a lot in turtles, but it is something a lot of people associate with turtles, but we really only see it with the eastern box turtle in Michigan. Now, another really cool thing to look at here is her eyes. So her eyes may look a little basic because they are just brown, but what is very, very cool is that you can actually tell that she is a female from the color of those eyes. So if she had very bright red eyes, you would actually be able to tell that the eastern box turtle is a male. But since she has these brown eyes, we know that she is a female. And the reason this is very cool is because eastern box turtles are the only turtles in the entire world that you can tell if they're a boy or a girl from the color of those eyes. So it's something very, very unique that they do. Now, something else really awesome about them is if you look at her shell right here, you see that it's kind of gold and black, and it's got all these random dots everywhere. We actually have another eastern box turtle named Barney, and he has a completely different pattern on this shell. And this is because every eastern box turtle in the world has their own unique pattern. So Sprinkles is the only eastern box turtle in the entire world who has ever lived who has this pattern on her shell. So they are all very unique, and they can also come in other colors. So some of them may look a bit more red. Sprinkles is actually very black and gold compared to a lot of eastern box turtles, but they do have very unique shells that can show a lot of different colors, which is also very, very awesome about them. Now, eastern box turtles are omnivores, meaning that they like to eat both meat and vegetables, just like us here. But the thing that they eat that is considered protein or meat is actually bugs and insects. So what they like to do is they like to walk around the forest floor, and they use these really big claws that they got from their dinosaur ancestors to dig around in the soil and find things like worms and grubs that they can eat. So a lot of people think that they would just eat kind of vegetables or plants or berries. They technically are omnivores because they do really like eating bugs also. And then, like I said, you mostly will find them walking around forests, which is very odd for turtles. Like I said, most of the time you see turtles in water. You don't see them walking around underneath trees and things like that. So the eastern box turtle is very, very unique and a very special turtle that we treasure here in Michigan. And it's something that we do need saving through many different things, like helping preserve our wetlands, helping turtles cross the road, and also helping teach people about why turtles, wild turtles especially, do not always make the best pets. There are a lot of turtles that you can buy from the pet store, but the eastern box turtle is not one of them. All right, does anybody have any questions about the eastern box turtle here? Maybe turtles in general?
Yeah, Inara, Dolly, go ahead.
How many different types of turtles are there?
So there are a lot of different turtles in the world. So you can go from things like eastern box turtles, which are terrestrial, to things like painted turtles, snapping turtles, red-eared sliders, which live in a lot of their ponds and lakes that are found in our backyards. And then there are even really, really big sea turtles, if anyone's seen Finding Nemo, that you would find in the ocean. So I don't know that number exactly, but off of the top of my head, I believe there are about 8 different species of turtles that live in the state of Michigan. So at the Howell Nature Center, we have the eastern box turtle, we have the painted turtle, we also have musk turtles, we have a Blandings turtle, we have a red-eared slider and a yellow-bellied slider, and then there are also snapping turtles. So there aren't a ton, but there are a pretty good amount of different turtles that you can find in Michigan.
Yeah, it looks like, according to Britannica, there are 356 different species of turtles all across the world, and that includes sea turtles and terrestrial turtles as well.
Yeah, and then another thing that I kind of forgot to mention that's really awesome about turtles is that a lot of turtles can live very, very long lives. So the Blandings turtle, which I just mentioned, which we do have one in our nature center, they actually technically would never die from old age. So eastern box turtles here, they can live to about 40, 50 years in captivity if they're given really great care, which is really incredible for such a small animal. But even something like a Blandings turtle, they technically don't age. So unless they are eaten by something or get sick and die, they technically can just keep living and living. And if you did see one in the wild, it would be safe to assume that if it's full size, it could be over 100 years old. So a lot of turtles are really, really cool in that they live really long times.
Wow. Tommy, did you have a question? Or Patrick?
Yeah, is there any painted turtles in the Howell Nature Center?
Yep, so we do have one painted turtle named Kara, and they are Michigan's reptile, like state reptile. So they are probably the most populous turtle you'd find in Michigan. So a lot of us probably have seen painted turtles at some part in our life, even if we didn't know we were looking at them. So for all of you, if you are outside near a pond, look for logs and rocks and sticks that may be sticking out of the water. And there's a good chance you'll find an not an eastern box turtle, a painted turtle sunbathing. So that is the most likely turtle you would see. And we do have one at our nature center.
I actually have a pond right outside my house right there.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, you've probably got some turtles and frogs and stuff living out there.
But all there is frogs, it's not really turtles.
Oh, okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions about Sprinkles here before I put her away? All right, cool.
Do we know how old Sprinkles is?
So off the top of my head, I can't think of it right now. I believe it is around like 20.
Okay.
We have another eastern box turtle named Barney. And we've had him for about 15 years now. So we have had our box turtles for a pretty long time. I just apologize. I can't think of that number off the top of my head.
But she's full size.
Yes, she is an adult. She is probably about like in the middle of her life. But what's really cool is that even if she is about 15, 20 years old, if she is healthy and she doesn't get sick or anything, she could live twice as long as that. So that is something cool about turtles, is that they can live very, very long times. All right, cool. So we can now move on to our final animal. All right, hi, buddy. You ready to come out? All right, step up, boys. Step up. Good boy. Who's a good bird? All right, so this right here is Horus, and Horus is an American kestrel. So Horus is about 7 or 8 years old, and the reason that he is with us is because he is what is called mal-imprinted on people. So a lot of us who have pet mammals at home, like cats and dogs, the technical term for that is being acclimated towards people, meaning that those animals are very used to being taken care of by people, so they couldn't be released back out into the wild. Now, birds are very special in circumstances where people have them as pets because they do what is called imprinting. Now, what that means is that since Horus spent so much time around people when he was a young bird, he actually thinks he's a person now. So he actually doesn't know he's a bird. He thinks he's a person just like all of us. So what usually happens in the wild is that when a bird is born, usually it spends all of its time around mom in the nest, and mom will teach it everything it needs to know, and it becomes imprinted on its mother. So it knows that it is a bird. It knows all the things it needs to do. Now, what happens, unfortunately, is that a lot of times, if people find birds injured, or maybe they find their nest and think that the bird's abandoned, people will take that bird home to once again be their illegal pet. And that is something that most likely happened to Horus. And because of that, he got mal-imprinted, meaning that he actually thinks he's a person. And because of that, he doesn't have all those skills that a kestrel needs to survive out in the wild. So something that, or not something, something that you can, I can tell you guys so you know what a kestrel is specifically, is that kestrels are actually in the falcon family. So they are related to the peregrine falcon, which is the fastest animal on Earth. So although kestrels are not as fast, they do share a lot of those things that we know about falcons, like flying very fast, being able to see their prey from very high up in the sky. Now, Horus here is considered a raptor. So all of our birds of prey that we have are considered raptors. And the things that makes them a raptor is that they hunt with their very sharp talons that you can find at the bottom of their feet. Now, anyone here who has ever maybe seen Jurassic World and knows about velociraptors like Blue, that is actually, those raptors are the reason that we think of birds of prey now as raptors. So they're direct descendants of those dinosaurs that lived thousands and thousands of years ago. So this is kind of another bird that gets kind of a cooler outlook throughout history than maybe something like our rats. So since they are called raptors, and a lot of people think of raptors as being very cool dinosaurs, a lot of times people tell me that their favorite dinosaurs are velociraptors. A lot of people see these birds of prey as being really, really cool. So because of that, people have historically done something called birding and banding. What that means is that they take birds and they can actually get them to fly onto their arm and kind of be their buddy with them. So there's one tribe from Siberia, I believe it is, that has actually trained golden eagles, which are even bigger than bald eagles, to be their lifetime partners, helping them hunt and do all the things that they need to survive. So historically, these birds of prey, these raptors, are seen as being very, very cool. And they're something that are liked by a lot of people. Now, that doesn't mean that we haven't lost some of them, similar to our turtles. So a lot of these birds also are unfortunately losing population numbers. The kestrel, since it is so adapted to living near people, we're actually not too worried about them, but other things like bald eagles and large birds like that, for a long time, we were kind of worried about them. Now, the biggest reason for this is something called rodenticide. And now this actually kind of works its way back to our rat. It kind of connects our rats with our raptors. Now, what rodenticide is it's a poison used to kill rodents. Now, what happens is that if a rat eats that poison and it dies, or maybe the poison messes it up so much that it really slows down, what this something like Horus would think is that, wow, that's a really easy meal. I'm going to go eat that rat. Now, what's really unfortunate about this is that that also poisons the bird and will usually kill the bird. Now, that is why we do like to talk about rodenticide, because it is one of the leading causes of death, unnatural deaths by raptors. And there are a lot of different other things we can do to keep things like mouse and rats out of our home. So if you kind of just have a singular issue, you can trap and release as long as it's far away from your home. They're not really going to try to come back. They'll just find a new home, a new food source to go find. But actually, there are a lot of cool, really new technological things that people are using. So there's something that makes this really high-pitched noise that only rats can hear. And that actually keeps rats out of people's homes pretty well. So there are a lot of different things that we can use besides poison to kill rats. And if any of you ever do have like a mouse or a rat problem at your house, and your parents' first instinct is to use poison, that is something you could tell them that, hey, if a bird ate this, that would also kill the bird, which is not really what we want, because we don't want to make really cool birds like Horus and bald eagles and owls and really awesome birds like that sick when they don't need to be. So talking a bit more about Horus specifically, kestrels are pretty cool. Like I said, they are part of the falcon family. So the way that they hunt is that they fly high in the sky and they use their eyesight to be able to see things on the ground. So when they're flying around, they can see something as small as a mouse on the ground, which is why eyesight is really, really important to a lot of raptors. A lot of the raptors that we do have that aren't imprinted on people, a lot of them with injuries actually do have eye injuries. It is something that can be pretty devastating for a bird because, like I said, they need to be able to see things from hundreds and hundreds of feet in the sky. And then once they do find something, what they do is they will drop down onto it very, very fast. Like I said, the peregrine falcon can go 270 miles per hour, which is 4 times faster than a cheetah. I'm not sure exactly how fast a kestrel would move. It's definitely not as fast as that, but they are very quick and very agile birds. Now, something interesting about them that you may notice is that Horus here actually is not too big. He's fairly small for a bird that eats other things. So he is only about the size of something like a robin or a blue jay. And Horus's favorite food in the wild would actually be sparrows. So a lot of us probably do have sparrows and small birds living near our home. This is the reason that kestrels are very good at surviving in a lot of situations, is because they can actually live near neighborhoods and near farms, and they like to eat those sparrows that like living near our houses. So it's actually a really good arrangement for them. And they're actually not too hurt by people like building or human development or anything, the way something like an eastern box turtle would be. What's up, buddy? So if you look really close at him and you look at that beak, something you might notice is that it's curved downwards. Now, you can actually tell a lot about what a bird eats from the shape of that beak and how they eat their food. So that is called Horus's tomial tooth. And the reason it is called that is because it actually acts like one of our sharp canine teeth. But since teeth are so heavy, if birds had them, they actually wouldn't be able to fly. It would weigh them down too much. So they use this hooked tomial tooth to be able to dig into their prey. And then when they're carrying them in their talons, they can actually rip apart their prey very quickly. Now, while this may seem a bit gruesome, it's actually necessary, because if Horus did have something like a mouse in his talons, we talked about how they have very big buck teeth, those big incisors that never stop growing. They're actually very good at defending them. And if Horus was bit by something like a mouse, it could actually do a lot of damage because the bird's feet, a bird's talons are very, very important to them. So they need to quickly be able to kill that prey. And that's what that hooked beak does. Now, kind of going along with this, birds also all have hollow bones. So us as people, we all have dense bones. And what that does is it helps us if we hit something or we get hit by something else, so that our bones don't always break very easily. Now, what is unfortunate about birds is that a lot of them, when they run into things like windows, they can very easily break their wings or break their bones because they do have those hollowed out bones. But the trade-off is that it does help them fly. So it's not only just a negative thing. Now, something final cool to point out about Horus is these black streaks you see underneath his eyes. So these are really, really cool. They're called Malar Stripes. And what they do is they actually help block out the sun, similar to how sunglasses do. So a horse is flying high in the sky. It makes sense that the eye or the sun could cause a lot of glare and get into his eyes. So similar to how football players like to put eye black on their eyes, we actually got that idea from birds like Horus. Those black stripes are actually able to absorb the sunlight and then keep those glare out of his eyes, so he can see all the things that he needs to hunt. Now, lastly, Horus is a boy. And the reason we are actually able to tell this is from the colors on his back. So he's got this grayish blue coloring. This is actually only seen in the males. Now, this is very unique about Horus because a lot of raptors, a lot of birds of prey, you actually can't tell the difference from the colors of their feathers. So think about something like a bald eagle. If it's a male or a female, they actually look very, very similar. The only way you can tell them apart is by their size. But Horus and American kestrels are very special, where you can actually tell if they're a boy or a girl just from their colors. So if you do see one in the wild and it has this grayish blue spot, you know that it's a boy. If you see one and it's mostly just brownish and red, you would know that it's a girl. But Horus here is a boy kestrel. All right, so I think that's all I've got for Horus. Does anybody have any questions about him? Yeah.
Inara, Dolly, go ahead.
How old is he?
So he is about 7 years old. So kestrels can actually live in captivity to about 10. They could even make it a little bit longer. Something that's really cool about having our animals is that although it is unfortunate that a lot of them can't be released, all of our permanent residents can't be released out into the wild and live their natural animal lives, the cool trade-off is that since we are able to take such great care of them, and we do have our wildlife clinics so close and accessible for all of our animals, a lot of our animals are actually able to live a lot longer lives than they would in the wild. So a really good example of this, if anybody ever gets to come out, is we have a red fox named Vixen, and Vixen is 15 years old. Now, the reason this is so special is because most foxes don't live past 5 years old. So Vixen's already lived 3 times as much as she was supposed to in the wild. And what's super special about her is that the oldest red fox ever was 16. So she's only a year or 2 away from being one of the oldest red foxes who has ever lived. So that really does just show how great of care we are able to provide our animals.
Yeah, Tegan, you have a question?
What do they eat?
So they are carnivores. So Horus here would only eat meat in the wild. So like I said before, his favorite meal is actually sparrows and maybe other really small birds, small songbirds that live around our home. But he would also eat other things like mice and moles and voles, and maybe even really small like frogs or snakes. But his favorite food, like I said, would be like other small birds, which may seem a little bit weird, but a lot of hawks and falcons actually like eating songbirds and birds that live near our home, like sparrows. That's actually their favorite food a lot of the time.
Very cool.
All right. Is there any other final questions before I put Horus away? All right. Awesome. Can you go back? Good boy. All right, everyone. So it is about 7:02. So we can kind of start wrapping up now. I do apologize for the technical difficulties earlier. Like we said, we are trying to figure out a lot of our new stuff in our studio. We upgraded a lot of stuff, but we still kind of have to figure out how all of it works and whatnot. So I want to thank you all for being very, very patient and sticking with us throughout that. And you all also did a very great job of engaging and asking really awesome questions about our animals. If any of you do ever have the opportunity to come to the Howell Nature Center, I recommend you do that. Like I said, we have a lot of awesome animals. I remember I heard someone say at the beginning, say they would like to be a lynx. We do have a bobcat, which is very similar to a lynx. So there are a lot of really awesome animals that you really don't get to see in the wild in Michigan that you can see here if you come visit. So I do want to recommend that. And then lastly, I just want to thank everyone one more time for tuning in and listening to this program. I really appreciate that.